Hey everybody, welcome back to Spooky Scary Storytime. I'm ashleeinc, your host, and today we're going to be talking about a psychic and energy healer's warning for empaths. If you're a person that identifies as an empath, she suggests to maybe wait before you announce to the world or to other people that you are an empath, because sometimes people aren't the only ones who are going to hear it. The psychic in question who emailed me is called Clara for this episode. That's not her real name. She did not want to be identified because she shared her story more so as a warning to others and a tip for others, and she just didn't want her clients thinking that she's out here airing their business. I did actually ask her if she wanted to be a guest on this episode so we could have a little bit of a back and forth, but she declined, and I totally respect that. But as for her background goes, she started developing her psychic abilities when she was a preteen. She said they just seemed to come to her naturally. She's clairaudience, she's clairsentient, and she is clairvoyant. She also has extremely strong kinesthetic abilities, which is what led her to practice Reiki and become an energy healer. We'll get more into what all of those abilities are later on in this episode, but first we're going to share her story, or I should say the story of one of her clients, which she felt was an accurate representation of the warning she is trying to convey. When I first read her email, I really thought that this was just going to be a short form Spooky Scary Storytime episode on TikTok and Instagram. I didn't really expect it to take form the way that it did, but it really caught my interest. Not only because of the story, but because she provided so much context and so much information about the types of psychic abilities and practices that anyone can do to cut an energetic tie to a person or an event or a trauma. I want to add a little disclaimer that obviously this is not the only way to deal with trauma or an attachment to a person. This might just be something that works for you if you're open to exploring alternative methods, because maybe traditional therapy didn't work for you. I'm just putting it out there. Obviously, you do you. There's no right and wrong in this. This is simply for entertainment and the sharing of information that may be useful to someone out there. The back and forth with Clara for this episode was so warm and engaging and insightful because she really wanted to convey the idea that everyone is psychic. Whether you believe it or not, everyone has abilities that you are just born with. It's just part of being human. And she said a lot of things that we experience as supernatural or perhaps paranormal phenomena isn't really that strange. It's just a manifestation of something that we haven't tapped into yet. She said that clairvoyant people, who are people that can see things, who are also empaths, tend to see shadow people, and shadow people aren't really evil entities lurking around or ghosts. They're just energetic attachments that linger and attach to residual or strong emotional energy. And so that's kind of related to the story that she brings up. And this is the story that she shared originally for Spooky Scary Storytime. Maybe some of you have already seen that video. I'm just going to recap it here for anyone who hasn't. So recently, Clara gets this client who she calls Sue, and Sue books a session with her for Reiki healing because she feels like she has some blockages in her emotional body. Reiki healing focuses on blockages in the emotional body. So Sue believes that these blockages stem from some childhood trauma, which she didn't really get into. She just said that that trauma led her to seek or repeat the same patterns in her love life. She continuously dated narcissistic and emotionally unavailable men. She had this innate need to fix them, and she didn't know why. And she either wanted to be able to fix one for good, or she wanted to be able to move on with her life. And at the time that Sue comes to Clara, she is dating this man named James. And obviously James is different from her exes, but he exhibits all the same behaviors. He's just generally not very nice to her. They had been dating for a while, and Sue was just completely emotionally exhausted, wanted to let go of him, but just couldn't do it. Every time they broke up, she found herself going back. She just could not get away from this man or men like him. And Clara said that Reiki is effective for some people and not so effective for others. It really just depends on your belief system. So at the first and second sessions, they're kind of going over Sue's core belief systems. They're working out through some lighter blockages before they get to the deeper ones. Sue seems to be making progress in the sense that she can at least identify when her triggers come up in the relationship. One night she's over at James's house, and this is the night right before her third session with Clara. She's over at James's house, and they get into a bad fight about something. There's a lot of yelling back and forth, and at one point, Sue reveals to James that she's actually seeing Clara the following day in order to basically get over the relationship. She also tells him that she's an empath, and to this, he scoffs at her. He laughs. He says, being an empath is just something that weak people say to make themselves feel special. And Sue's like, you know what? I've had enough. She recognizes that this relationship is not right, and she decides she needs to remove herself from the situation, so she leaves his house. She only lives a few miles from James. It's like a 10 to 15 minute drive. She decides she's driving home. She just feels the need to take this other route. It's through a cornfield. The stalks are high when this story takes place. The corn is grown. I'm assuming it's late summer. As she's driving through this cornfield, she just feels this immense sense of sadness, and she pulls over because she knows she's going to cry. There's no other cars on the road. I'm not sure what time this happened at, but she said it was dark outside. There's a single street light. She pulls over. She gets out of her car. She sits on the hood, and she just breaks down crying. She said it was the most intense sadness that she could imagine feeling at the time. She didn't really know what was going on. It was maybe just everything coming to a head. As she's sobbing on the hood of her car, she has the sense of being watched. And so she looks up, and through the stalks of corn, she can see a human-like shadow figure that seems to be looking at her. She said she stared at it for a minute. She squinted her eyes. She was trying to make out if it was a person, but it was distinctly transparent. And then it seemed to move through the corn stalks, but there was nothing in the sky. There was no clouds that night. It was moving through the stalks in an unnatural way, but she said she felt this sense of being attached to it somehow, maybe through like an invisible cord or string. Her sadness subsides. She thinks it was just a trick of the light or a trick of her eyes. She goes home, but she still feels this sense of sadness, and she can't explain it. And she walks in the house, and both of her dogs, which she has had since puppies, they're siblings, they sleep in the bed with her, they're her babies. Both of her dogs are cowering in the corner when she walks in and are yelping and growling at her. And she said this disturbed her more than anything because she loves those dogs. She has never mistreated them. And as she's telling Clara all this the next day at her Reiki session, she's saying, I don't know how, but I feel like it's connected somehow to what happened and what I saw in the cornfield. And then she tells Clara that on the way over to her session, she stopped at a gas station. She filled up her tank. She went in to get a drink. And as she's paying, the clerk is looking at her strangely. And the clerk says, "Are you okay?" And Sue's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" And she's like, "You just have this heavy energy about you. I just feel like you're going through something." And Sue just thinks this is weird because that's a strange thing for a stranger to say to another stranger. And so she tells Clara all this, and Clara immediately said that she knew what was going on, which was the shadow figure that she saw in the cornfield was not an evil entity. It was an emotional attachment, which so many people have unknowingly. These attachments can manifest visually for those who are clairvoyant or have untapped clairvoyant skills. And people often throw around the term shadow people or shadow figures or the Hat Man, but really it's none of those things. It's the residual energy of a place or a person or a trauma that is felt so real and so vividly that it attaches to a vulnerable emotional state. Clara said that a lot of people who have experienced extreme traumas often have these attachments. And these attachments are what can manifest as being extremely tired or depressed or feeling an immense sense of guilt or sadness or fear that just doesn't even seem like it belongs to you. And Clara said she absolutely does not want to discredit Western medicine or traditional therapy because those things can and do work for a lot of people in order to get rid of these attachments. Western and traditional medicine are generally effective for people who have a very scientific or logical or analytical mindset. And that's great. I think that whatever works for you, you should pursue. But for the people who are maybe a little bit more spiritual or energetically aligned or just curious about alternative methods to get rid of these attachments, there are definitely ways to do it. What's going to be most effective for you is kind of dependent on where you feel your psychic strength lies. And so we'll go over the different types of psychic abilities that Clara has been so kind to provide for us. And then we'll get into the different types of exercises that you can do if you feel like you have an emotional attachment. And these are not all types of psychic abilities. These are just some of the more common abilities. Clara also said that most people are able to tap into more than one of these. So if you feel drawn to a particular set of these abilities, it might be worth looking into. Two of the most common types of psychic abilities are clairvoyance and clairaudience. Clairvoyance is the ability to receive intuitive information visually. You may be clairvoyant if you often daydream, if you have a vivid imagination and you're picturing things visually in your mind's eye. You may manifest things easily through visualization. You may experience spontaneous visions even with closed eyes. Or you may just be drawn to beauty, art, and other aesthetics. Edgar Cayce is perhaps the most famous clairvoyant. He was known as the sleeping prophet, and he is one of the most well-known clairvoyants in modern history. He gave thousands of psychic readings in a trance-like state, describing his past lives and others' past lives, future events, and medical diagnoses, all through his visions. He would see a person's energy field and then their soul blueprint while they were asleep, and he was able to access the Akashic records for a specific person or group of people. Surprisingly, there was also a religious figure who was known as a clairvoyant, and that is Joan of Arc. As a teenager, she claimed to have seen visions of saints and angels guiding her with divine messages. Her clairvoyance helped shape military strategy and spiritual leadership during the 100 Years' War, and her visions were often vivid and symbolic, which is just a general hallmark of clairvoyance. If you've ever heard the term crystal or indigo children, these children are often also clairvoyant. Most children naturally actually exhibit clairvoyance before society and their parents and the world conditions them out of it. But these are the children that typically report seeing spirit guides or angels. They have imaginary friends that turn out to be deceased relatives, and some of them have even described having seen scenes from past lives. I think there was one report of a child who actually was able to lead investigators and detectives to a body. So that might be worth exploring. Crystal and indigo children are definitely a rabbit hole that I would like to dive a little bit deeper on in maybe a future episode. But artists and creatives are absolutely another example of people with clairvoyant abilities that may be untapped. In this way, their clairvoyance is expressed symbolically. Visionaries like Leonardo da Vinci and William Blake have reported being guided by unseen imagery or divine visions. Clairvoyance isn't always about prophecy. Sometimes it manifests through symbolic or just sacred art. Like clairvoyance, clairaudience utilizes another human sense. It's one of the most subtle yet powerful psychic abilities. It means clear hearing, which is the ability to receive intuitive information through sound, voice, or tone. This doesn't always mean hearing audible tones. Most clairaudients receive messages as internal dialogue, sudden words, musical tones, or guidance that feels like it's just not their own thoughts. An undeveloped clairaudience skill may manifest as ringing in your ears, hearing your name called when no one is there, sensitivity to tones and background noise, especially when in a crowd or a big group, and having inner dialogue that almost feels like a conversation with someone else. You may even hear songs or lyrics in your head that reflect exactly what you or someone else around you is feeling. You may have also been told that you talk to yourself a lot, or your inner voice is just extremely active and detailed. One other sign may be that you wake up and you have a name or a phrase or a word that's just lingering in your ear. Like it's in your head, but it's in your ear. And that word or phrase or name might just be particularly accurate or relevant to the day. Famous clairaudients include Mozart. Yes, the composer. He said that he heard entire compositions complete in his head before they were done. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night to write them down. He was not traditionally considered psychic, but many clairaudients express their gift through music. Helen Schumann, who is the author of A Course in Miracles, is another example of a clairaudient. She claimed her entire book was dictated by an inner voice, which was not her own, and she identified that voice as Jesus. She heard the words in her mind and transcribed them verbatim over several years before publishing the book. Another commonly untapped psychic ability is the ability of precognition or retrocognition. Precognition is the psychic ability to perceive or sense future events before they happen. It can come through dreams, flashes, body sensations, or sudden intuitive downloads. It shows up in the form of perhaps dreaming something and then it comes true days or weeks or even years later. You may suddenly know when someone will call you or know what someone will say or do or choose in a situation before they do it. You may be able to finish someone's sentences. You may have unexplained anxiety or excitement before a major event, and then something happens to confirm that your preconceived notion or feeling was correct. You may feel deja vu and then realize you've dreamed or envisioned this moment before. Nostradamus is a prime example of a precognitive person. His prophetic visions span centuries. They were written down and passed on through the ages. Abraham Lincoln was perhaps another precognitive person. He had a dream foretelling his own death days before it occurred. And Clara said that people are often clairvoyant and precognitive. These two abilities seem to go hand in hand. Retrocognition, on the other hand, is knowing the past that you didn't live. It is the psychic ability to access past memories that you didn't consciously experience, including historical moments, past lives, or ancestral memories. It shows up maybe in the sense that you walk into a room and you feel like you've been there before in a different time. You may have a sense of longing for a place that you've never been. You may meet someone and instantly know details about their past, like their childhood, their trauma, their relationships. In a sense, it's reading people. You may see visions, symbols, or flashbacks of events from another lifetime or historical era that you just can't explain. Like, you know that they're accurate, but you have no way of verifying. You may feel deeply and emotionally impacted by places, music, or cultures with no logical explanation. And like precognition, you may just experience deja vu. Examples of retrocognitive people include children with past life memories like James Leninger. And this is perhaps the most compelling and well-documented modern case of retrocognition and past life memory, particularly in a child. James is an American boy who, starting around the age of 2, began showing intense, detailed memories of being a World War II fighter pilot, specifically a man named James Huston Jr., who died in combat in 1945. At just 2 years old, James began screaming in his sleep about plane crashes, shouting phrases like airplane crash, on fire, little man can't get out. He would kick and flail violently, something extremely rare for toddlers unless trauma is involved. He began identifying World War II era planes with startling accuracy, including the Corsair, which was a fighter plane few toddlers would know. And he also referenced specific technical issues, such as the Corsair always had blowouts on the tires. James said he flew off in a ship called the Natoma Bay, which was a real World War II aircraft carrier. He named a pilot friend Jack Larson, who turned out to have served on that exact ship. James also said that he died when his plane was shot down, which aligned with the actual death of pilot James Huston Jr., who perished in 1945 during a mission there. Initially skeptical, James's Christian parents, Bruce and Andrea, began researching his claims. And they were able to verify dozens of historical facts that their son had mentioned, all without ever exposing him to World War II history or media. James's case has been studied by Dr. Jim Tucker of the University of Virginia, a psychiatrist who specializes in children's past life memories. If you're interested in that story, you can read about it more in depth in a book called Soul Survivor, The Reincarnation of a World War II Fighter Pilot. There is actually also a Netflix series called Surviving Death that James was featured on. But James's story is a modern-day example of retrocognition through reincarnation, showing how children, particularly those under the age of 7 for some reason, can access profound psychic memory before it's conditioned out. It also affirms the idea that soul memory can survive death, echoing traditions found in Hinduism, Buddhism, and many indigenous cultures. The ability to act as a medium or a vessel for channeling are also two common untapped psychic abilities. And there's no need to be scared. I know both of these are touchy subjects, but Clara assured me that they are the same as any of these, a gift. Mediumship is connecting with the spirits of the departed. It is the ability to communicate with spirits of those who have passed away, whether they are loved ones, ancestors, or other spirit beings. The medium acts as a translator between the physical and the spiritual world, and communication can happen through clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, which is feeling, or even physical sensations or symbols. Some mediums are mental mediums, which they receive information internally, while others are physical mediums, and the spirit may influence their voice or their body or their posture. Signs you may be a medium include you can sense spirits or presences around you. I have gotten a lot of these emails for Spooky Scary Storytime where people say, oh, they're just bored spirits lingering around with nothing to do. It's almost nonchalant in the way that it's presented. You may have seen or heard a loved one after their passing. You may get specific messages, images, or words about someone else's deceased relatives, often out of nowhere. I think that one woman, the Long Island medium, I've seen clips of it. I think that she would often just go up to strangers. I'm not sure if that show is scripted, but she would often go up to strangers and just say, I have a message for you. You may feel drawn to cemeteries, death work, or ancestral healing. You may have had spontaneous connections during grief or prayer. Common experiences include a sudden inner knowing about someone's departed loved one, feeling emotions of physical pains that are not yours. They actually just may be tied to a particular spirit story. You may speak in the voice or tone of the deceased, and you may receive names, memories, or messages from beyond, often confirmed by others. Channeling is a little bit different, but it is essentially becoming a conduit for higher wisdom or non-physical beings. It's the ability to receive and transmit information from higher consciousness, spirit guides, deities, extraterrestrial intelligences, or collective energies. The channel basically enters a relaxed or altered state and allows another consciousness to speak or move through them, either verbally, through writing, or energy transmission. It can be trance channeling, which is more overt, or conscious channeling, which is when you're aware that you're receiving information. You may have the gift of channeling if you are able to download deep spiritual truths or complex ideas rapidly, especially during writing or meditation. Your voice, energy, or even posture shifts when you're inspired or when you're teaching someone something that you care about passionately about. You may receive names, dialects, or cosmic information that you've never studied. You may feel the presence of a wise being or collective when you're helping others or doing energy work. You may have experienced the ability to do automatic writing, which is when you put pen to paper and words come out when you don't seem to be doing the writing. It's essentially having words flow through you that you don't feel like are yours. Some examples of channelers that are alive and practicing today are Abraham Hicks, Bashar, or the Seth material. You can find all of those people on YouTube or pretty much anywhere on the internet. The next gift is that of the nature empaths. I love this one. It's the psychic ability to feel and intuitively connect with the consciousness of nature. Nature empathy is deeply sacred, especially in indigenous cultures. It's an intuitive gift that's often overlooked in traditional psychic discussions, but it reflects a profound energetic sensitivity to the natural world. And those who hold this ability are often guardians, earth intuitives, or elemental sensitives. These people are intuitively attuned to plants, animals, weather patterns, and elemental forces. They don't just love nature, they feel it. They feel its mood, they feel its energy shifts, they feel its pain and its joy. Some even receive guidance directly from the earth itself. And this ability often overlaps with Clairsentience, which is the ability to feel, and shamanic sensitivity. Signs that you may be a nature empath are feeling particularly emotionally or physically affected by issues like deforestation, pollution, or environmental destruction, sometimes as if it's happening to you personally. You may experience a serene sense of peace, clarity, or communion when you're in forests or oceans or mountains. Animals may naturally be drawn to you, or you intuitively know their needs or emotions. You may feel drained or disoriented in cities or overly technological spaces and recharged by water, trees, or sunlight. You sense the energy of weather shifts, storms, or lunar cycles before they happen. You talk to plants, trees, or elements, and sometimes you receive responses back, either in thoughts, feelings, or just in signs. My gut feeling says that all of us are nature empaths, right? I think we all feel better when we're in the ocean or in the mountains or in a beautiful natural place. But Clara wanted to point out the gifts of nature empaths and people who can tap into this ability, because these people can act as a bridge between human and non-human worlds, which is so important, especially in a rapidly technologically advancing world. They can bring healing through land tending, plant medicine, or earth-based ritual. They can channel earth-based messages, prophecies, or ancestral wisdom, which is so often lost in today's world. And most importantly, maybe, is they feel the aliveness of all things, which is a key part of many ancient and indigenous spiritual traditions. If you want to strengthen this ability, if you feel like you're a nature empath, some practices she gave me, for examples, are to sit with a tree and ask it a question. Listen with your heart, not just your ears. Keep a nature journal tracking how weather, moon phases, and seasons affect your emotions. Practice offering rituals, flowers, water, song, organic elements, basically, to the land in exchange for energetic balance. Try plant communication meditations, which is focusing on one living plant and opening your intuition to its voice. And you can also work with crystals. If you feel particularly drawn to crystals, you might be a nature empath. But if you work with crystals or flower essences, you can also help tune this ability. Clairsentience is another gift that I feel like many people have, if not all. It's the ability to feel or sense energy, emotions, and information without physical cues. It means you receive psychic or intuitive insight through physical sensations and emotional impressions. Instead of hearing or seeing spirit, you feel it. It's like having an emotional or energetic radar. It's tuned to people, environments, spirits, or even time, like past or future events that carry emotional signatures. Signs you may be clairsentient include feeling like other people's emotions affect you as if they're your own, even across distances, especially with people that you're close to. You might walk into a room and immediately feel the vibe, tension, or history there. You may experience unexplained chills, tingles, nausea, or pressure that seems to carry messages. You just know when someone is lying, upset, or hiding something, even if they're smiling. You may have been called too sensitive or too intense, but you actually just feel energetic truth. You may get sudden shifts in mood or body temperature around certain people, objects, or places. You may feel spirit presences or energy shifts physically, even if nothing is visible or audible. And finally, the last gift that Clara detailed for me in our exchange, although keep in mind there are many more besides the ones I'm covering in this episode, is psychometry, which is object reading. It is the intuitive reading of an object's energetic memory. Every item, especially one that's been worn, loved, or emotionally charged, like a wedding ring, for example, can absorb and store vibrations, emotions, and experiences from its surroundings or from its previous owners. When you hold or touch the item, you tap into its energetic history. The way that it works is through touch, your energy body downloads the residual emotions, images, or sensations stored in an object. The impressions may come as flashes of images, which ties to clairvoyance, strong emotions, which ties to clairsentience, words, names, or sounds that tie to clairaudience, or a sudden knowing, which ties to claircognizance. Psychometry is often spontaneous. Many people don't realize that they're doing it until they feel overwhelmed when they're in an antique store, for example, or a thrift store or a museum. But some signs that you may have this ability is getting emotional or uncomfortable when you're touching an old item, especially jewelry or clothing. You may avoid thrifted or secondhand goods because they feel heavy or not yours. You may feel strong connections to family heirlooms or sacred objects, even those that you've never seen before, or maybe ones that don't even belong to your family. You may touch an item and suddenly see or feel its story. And you may instinctively hold photos, tools, or furniture and feel their energy before analyzing them. If you want to practice this gift, if you feel like this is you, Clara said to start with emotionally charged objects like a wedding ring or a watch or a childhood toy. Hold it in your receptive, which is usually your non-dominant hand, and close your eyes. Tune into your first impressions, so your emotions, your physical sensations, visuals, names, anything that comes to mind, and then record what you get, either in audio on like a voice memo or in a notepad, even if what you get seems vague or odd. And then validate with the owner if possible. And this helps you build trust in your skill. Mediums often use this skill to connect to the deceased through objects they owned. Healers and intuitives use it to sense trauma or energy imprints in sacred tools, homes, or land. And crime intuitives or psychics may read objects like clothing, photos, or personal items to track missing people. This is so interesting. But this skill also came from a warning from Clara. And she said that if you get easily overwhelmed, ground yourself first. That means to go stand outside barefoot or with organic soled shoes like leather. Like, go touch grass. I mean that figuratively and literally. This will help transmute some of the overwhelming energy. Also, Clara said to consider wearing black tourmaline, obsidian, or hematite. I hope I'm saying that right. When you're handling secondhand or emotionally heavy objects, which will prevent that energy from being transferred to you. And so now that we've covered some of the more common psychic abilities or gifts, we can dive into how to break an emotional attachment if you feel like you have one. I feel like the gifts were important to know first so that you'll know which process or exercise will work best for you. Because again, this really does depend on your own specific belief system. And if you didn't feel any particular attachment or draw to any of the psychic skills that I went over, that's okay too. You may just feel particularly drawn to one of these exercises. And if so, that's the one that you should do to break your emotional tie. So let's get into how to break energetic ties as an empath. All of these practices are beginner friendly, and these are just some tips to release attachments that you feel like don't belong to you or don't serve you any longer. Some of these practices were formed as ancestral tools and have been used for centuries throughout human civilization, and others are newer. But either way, the best method just depends on your unique psychic strengths and what you feel most drawn to. All of these practices can be done at home. You don't need to hire a professional. Luckily, we live in a time where YouTube exists, and you can find so much information about all of these practices and more just by doing a quick Google search. We're going to start with Reiki because that is Clara's specialty and what she practices as a career, as a life path. But during Reiki, the practitioner or the person can scan the body for attached cords, focusing on healing energy on those areas, gently releasing the attachments. People who may be gifted at this are those with kinesthetic abilities, who can feel a physical shift that is both validating and powerful. By doing this, it restores natural energy flow without needing to mentally process every connection. Nature empaths may be drawn to Reiki or energy healing. People who are particularly athletic or in tune with their bodies, maybe you're very into eating healthy food and organic foods, this may appeal to you. If you're a person who feels like you may have strong clairvoyant skills or undeveloped clairvoyant skills, the cord cutting method might be effective for you. And the cord cutting method is actually what Clara used for Sue, her client that we referenced early on in this episode. Cord cutting is most effective for visual thinkers and those who can bring imagery to the forefront of their mind easily. This is because the imagery of a cord and a sword or scissors cutting the cord engages the subconscious mind, creating a real energetic shift. What you do in this exercise is you imagine a cord linking you to a person or trauma. You see it clearly in your mind. You see the thickness of the cord, the color of the cord, the texture of the cord. And then you visualize a sword or scissors severing the cord. You watch the ends retract and heal with golden light. Upon finishing, you just know that it's done. As I just read that exercise, I could see it in my mind's eye. So I know that clairvoyance may be one of my untapped skills. I've also always tended to manifest relatively easily through visualization. And I've even actually made videos on that in the past. Way before I got into Spooky Scary Storytime, I actually used to make videos about the law of assumption. And I always suggested, imagine this in your brain. And I couldn't get it through my mind that other people don't have the power to visualize. That's obviously not to say that that's a deficiency. Everyone has their own unique skill sets. It's just, this is a particularly strong sense of mine. If you are feeling like you are drawn to the Clairaudience skill set, or perhaps you're just a deeply spiritual or religious person, prayer might be the most effective way to rid yourself of an emotional tie. And Clara says this is because words carry a vibrational power that aligns your intention with divine support. Everyone who knows how to pray prays in their own way, but it's also crossed my mind before that maybe some people don't know how to pray. Maybe you feel removed from religion or spirituality for whatever reason, and that's okay too. But if you want to try this and you don't know how, all you have to do is call upon God, angels, or your highest self. And this can be whatever God or your concept of God that you believe in or feel comfortable with. It can also just be energy or the universe. But you call upon God or this source energy, and you say aloud a decree such as, I call my power back to me now. I sever and dissolve all cords that do not serve my highest good with love and forgiveness. And that's it. It's done. There is actually also a Hawaiian forgiveness prayer that I've come across that reminds me a bit about this, but it is just the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. There's a longer name that I have no idea how to pronounce. I'm not even going to attempt it. But it is essentially repeating the Hawaiian mantra, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, while you think of a person or situation. And this is especially effective when guilt, resentment, or shame are involved. This method transcends blame, focusing on healing through compassion and self-responsibility. This is another one for the nature empaths or for people who feel physical connections. Try a salt cleanse. You can soak in a bath with Epsom salt, sea salt, or herbs like rosemary, mugwort, or lavender, and these can help pull the attachments out of the energetic body. Salt has a high vibrational frequency that neutralizes negative energy, and the water elements transmute and carry it away from your body. Clara says to soak for about 20 minutes and then allow yourself to air dry if possible. This method is especially interesting to me because it reminds me of the biblical references to salt and pillars of salt. It sounds strange to say, but I've actually spent many hours of my life pondering salt and the meaning of it because salt holds deep symbolic meaning throughout the Bible. It's rich with spiritual, covenantal, and energetic significance that still resonates in metaphysical and spiritual practice today. I really first went down this rabbit hole when exploring manifestation on my own stemming from learning about the idea of manifestation and that our thoughts and intentions can actually shift and change reality to our will about 15 years ago. But the symbolism of salt historically is so interesting because essentially it acts as a symbol of purity and preservation. Salt was used in ancient times as a purifier and as a preservative, and spiritually it came to represent incorruptibility, holiness, and the idea of keeping something or someone undefiled. Leviticus 2:13 says, "You shall season all of your grain offerings with salt. You shall not let the salt of the covenant with your God be missing from your grain offering." And this means, at least I take it to mean, that salt was a required part of offerings to God even in these times. It symbolized purity, devotion, and the enduring nature of a covenant. I reference the Bible here just out of my own knowing. It's not to try to convert anyone. I actually am still deeply spiritual, but I don't subscribe to any one organized religion. I believe in God, but I also think that the Bible, just as any other religious texts, are important to reference when looking through history. I feel like the Bible, as other religious books, were written not to tell a true story, but to serve as parables and allegories. But the spiritual and metaphysical takeaways for today are that salt is cleansing, energetically and spiritually. It represents loyalty, truth, and sacred protection. It's often used in spiritual practice for clearing, boundary setting, and purification, which mirrors its biblical role. And it creates a boundary between the sacred and the profane, just as it did in temple offerings. Another ritual that might work for you if you struggle with visualization is a candle ritual. Candles represent the attachment. So all you have to do is write down what you're releasing on paper, place it under or beside the candle, and allow it to burn safely while focusing on your intention of letting go of whatever it was that you wrote down. Clara said that some pro tips for types of candles to use or colors of candles to use include using black candles for banishing, white candles for purification, or blue candles for healing and peace. You can also use a combination of all three if you feel like that would be effective. And finally, if you don't feel drawn to any of these exercises, Clara says to try a fire ceremony. This is extremely easy for beginners or those early on in developing their psychic abilities, or for those with earth-based and ritualistic personalities. Physical acts help to embody energetic intentions and create closure. And fire also acts as a purifier. To do this, write down the name of the person or trauma or event that you want to let go onto a piece of paper. Bless it with gratitude. Say out loud, "Thank you for your lessons," and then safely burn it. And while you're burning it, either visualize or let the smoke represent the idea that your problem is being carried away from you. The combination of the flame and the smoke will essentially act as a carrier for transmutation into the universe. You can do one or a combination of these rituals to let go of your attachment, but if you believe that you're letting go and that these practices will work for you, then they will. Clara says that although she's a professional, like she does this for work, the truth is that you don't have to see anyone professional, you don't have to pay anyone to verify that your attachment is gone. All you have to do is believe it. And as soon as you do, you should start seeing profound changes in your life. These concepts and practices were so interesting to me, and I am going to keep in contact with Clara. If you all have any questions that I didn't cover, I would love to do a follow-up episode with her in the future. Please feel free to leave a comment with your question wherever you're listening to this. I don't check comments every day, but I do look at them periodically, especially when I'm researching another episode or looking for what people want to know. So please let us know. Also, feel free to leave a comment and let me know what topics you would like me to cover in the future on Spooky Scary Storytime. Anything spooky, weird, unsettling, or just strange. I love it. I love it. I love going down the rabbit holes. I'm working on getting more of these long form episodes out because you all have indicated that that's what you're into, and I am hearing it. If you want to help support the podcast, you can become a Patreon on patreon.com/ashleeinc. That's ASHLEEINC. We also have Spooky Scary Storytime logo merch on dogoodstaybad.com. And that's also actually where you can submit a story. I've been really working hard to try to make this podcast better for you guys, and I appreciate so much you all who have been here since the beginning. And if you're just joining now, then thank you too. I appreciate you listening more than you could ever know. I think that the Spooky Scary Storytime audience has been so incredibly supportive and kind. I would like to say more than any other community I've seen on the internet, and I love that. I always try to encourage everyone to be kind to each other. If there's a topic covered that you don't necessarily believe in, that doesn't necessarily make it untrue for the person who experienced it. My handle is ashleeinc, that's ASHLEEINC, on all platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, which was where all of this began. TikTok and Instagram are updated almost daily with short form videos and short stories. So if you like this kind of spooky, weird stuff, definitely go check those out. I have a really, really cool opportunity in the pipeline that I'm not allowed to speak on yet, but I hope to make that announcement soon. Until then, stay spooky, and I will see you soon.